So in Nigeria or in Africa, not necessarily Nigeria alone now, we have this mentality of dominance. We want to be there. So we accept our dominance to remain relevant. So this relevance begins to intoxicate. And by the time it begins to intoxicate, we undo with utter disregard of established laws. I'm talking about the Constitution. Now going over to the Constitution now, it needs to be amended regarding the immunity clause. Yeah. These are so been abused such that even a former governor
welcome to another episode of Veegilants podcast, where we talk about civic matters and discuss from other people's perspective. I'm your host Olaita Baba today, and on today's episode, we're peeling the layers of textbook and talking about realities when it comes to political landscape in Nigeria. More like we're talking about realities, away from the things we read when we're doing political science or probably civic education in school. And on the show with me today is a political analyst who would be talking about this. We'll be discussing this together. He's a political analyst on Viewpoint and is Odiawa AI. And when I say AI, I don't mean artificial intelligence, but then we can also say he's also intelligent. All right, good afternoon, Odiawa. How are you doing?
I'm very, very fine. Thanks for the accolade. You're far too kind.
You're welcome. Okay, so earlier I talked about the fact that we're talking about something away from what we studied in school. When we were in school, we're taught a lot of things, but coming to the real world, it's a different thing entirely. And I'm sure that a lot of people out there, probably when they were in secondary school, or some even studied political science in school, and then we did civic education while we were in secondary school. And truth be told, I feel like majority of the things we see now outside, what we see our politicians do, is different from what we were taught when we were in school. So do you think these courses, they're a scam? And why do you think it's scam?
Frankly speaking, as a student of political science, I wouldn't say they're actually a scam, because we might end up saying like the average youthful parlance, school and scam.
Okay.
But we're not going to go into acknowledging the fact that political science or civic education is actually a scam. These are actually courses of study which actually inform the citizenry on what they ought to be informed about, considering institutions of governance, or maybe policy formulations, or even probably the rights of even the citizens. They need to inform the whole, for instance, there's an election coming up, the electorate. Yeah. These are platforms such as political science and civic education to give people information. But it so happens that in our own part of the world here, the reverse is the case. Politics has only been seen to be, practically speaking, or not on a theoretical note now, that is actually a pathway or route to generating wealth or accumulating wealth, which ought not to be. It's a case of public service and not private service, because these days politics is all about personal interest. The interest in which our politicians are actually serving now are either their pockets or a few people who are loyal to them based on selfish benefits.
Yeah. All right. So my next question is, political science teaches that strong institutions like the judiciary, legislature, electoral bodies, and anti-corruption agencies are the foundation of democracy. But in Nigeria, these institutions are often undermined by powerful individuals known as godfathers. And so, let's not go too deep about that. But then we know that godfatherism is one thing in Nigeria that it's like, they don't have to even be outside. They don't have to be known. But behind the scenes, these are the people that decide what is to happen. Why do you think that godfatherism has undermined democracy in Nigeria?
Well, actually, godfatherism, we should actually introduce. It's not only the white people who have a right to introduce ideologies in political science. Because during my course of study back then, our lecturer actually talked about godfatherism in a particular lecture in Doha. And he was like, the white man was like, he has never heard of such. They need to include it in the syllabus. So now godfatherism is an English language, but it was mainly based for the mafia bosses. But now it's been shifted over to politics. Why? Because it's a game of chess. Now, godfatherism, now they act behind the scenes. Why? Because they have the resources, they have the network to undermine independent bodies, just as you just mentioned, the judiciary, the electorate, or probably even the legislature. Now, mocking more seriously now is the Independent National Electoral Commission. How independent are you when your elections can be undermined? Why? Because logistically speaking, you cannot meet up. Why? Because a particular area is waterlogged and you don't have the facility or equipment to get there. And for instance, now you also secondly need to meet up with time. And because you cannot meet up with time, these godfathers will make sure they mobilize hooligans or thugs. They call them area boys here to actually stall the movement of electoral officials who are actually going to secure an election. Now, coming over to the legislature, these are elected officials who are distinguished colleagues who are actually meant to come on board to make sure they serve the interests of their constituency. But they end up not serving the constituency now. They end up serving these godfathers who actually belong to cabals. And it has to be a question of these elected officials trying to, make sure that they give back to Caesar what they were given to enable them get to office. So the cycle of Godfatherism will play a very, very, I won't say crucial role, nasty role. If it is not, it can't be cut anytime soon because it has come to stay for now. Hate it or love it.
So in theory, a competitive system is supposed to breed accountability. But why does Nigeria keep recycling same name across different party platforms? Like, for example, the former governor of Osun State is now the Minister for Marine and Blue Economy in Lagos State. So it's more like it's the same people that happens to be in the same, they might not particularly hold the same position, but then they are still in power in Nigeria. Why is that happening? We have young people who can come into power, I think there was a time that Banky W was trying to, come into politics, and well, we definitely know that didn't happen. So why is it that it's still the same people that are still in the system?
Well, looking at it, one word is key, and that's political relevance. Relevance in capital letter in caps, because nobody wants to be relegated to the background. He or she wants to be relevant one way or the other. If you notice how the political chess game takes place in Nigeria, when a particular contestant loses in the primary, he or she is compensated if their sole flag bearer wins office with either a commissioner role or maybe one ministerial role or one appointment in one MD or one parastatal or the other. He or she is always compensated one way or the other. That is the essence of the relevance here we're talking about. So these names keep on recycling round each platform or the other, or in one office or the other. It's the same thing in any establishment, either also in the military or the Navy, or there's a particular family that is always taking. That's why it starts from the house. For instance, now you have a father who is a lawyer, and the father is like, you must read law. When in fact, that child's brain doesn't have the capacity to read books. He or she wants to say, I want to do sound engineering. And the dad goes bonkers. He says, I'm a lawyer. Your mom is a lawyer. Your elder brother is a lawyer. It doesn't necessarily mean. So it's the same thing. What also, another factor now comes into play. That has to do with the names coming in. It now has to do with loyalty and patronage, which is now an opposing camp to accountability and transparency. For instance, there are shady deals which a politician has gotten himself or herself involved with. He or she wants to make sure that his or her person is there when he or she gets out of office, so that
they can cover up
their tracks. So it's a case of transparency and accountability versus patronage and loyalty. That is why they want their own people there, and the names keep going round and round in circles.
All right. So looking at that, if the name keep going round and round the cycle, when will it get to people like us?
That is where reliability now comes in. Is that particular person now dependable? It's like, for instance, somebody says, okay, let's use cars now, for instance, to compare for analysis sake now. This is a Rolls Royce. And then the next person, Rolls Royce is a luxury car, all right. Sure. But another person now brings another luxury car, such as Toyota, one of the luxurious Toyota vehicles. It's only normal for someone to go over to the Rolls Royce. Why? Because it's reliable and it's dependable. So you won't go after a mushroom candidate or a mushroom political party that has just been birthed from the womb. What are the caliber of people backing this political party? What's their financial status? What history do they have? What footprints have they laid on the political scene? You can't compare for instance, I'm sorry to mention their names, Zenith Labour Party or whatever with the PDP.
PDP.
Even though the PDP has its own entrenched crisis, you won't compare both parties. But when you're now talking about parties, now you're talking about three horse parties or three horsemen. The APC, the PDP, and of course the Labour Party.
Yeah.
Those are the things we should be looking at. They are all looking at reliability and the names they have also made for themselves, the caliber of people backing that party.
All right. So talking about parties, we know that each party has their own ideology, and their ideology is more like what they stand for. But then can we really say that exists in Nigeria? Because we see one person moving from one party to another. I think there was a former governor that moved from one party to the other because he said they are not, I think it was about corruption or some sort during that time. But then the same thing you said, the same reason why you left one party to the other is happening in the said party you moved to. So now my question is, this ideology thing, does it really exist in Nigeria, or it's just power rotation and personal interest that has filled up the heart of these politicians?
Well, looking at it, there is no party that comes out or that is formed, whether via coalition or alliance, or came out independently on its own, or was born out of a particular interest that doesn't have an ideology. But what politicians fail to recognize or realize is that they should understand the ideology backing the party. Let me use Labour Party, for instance. Now, Labour Party is a people-centric party. Mama, Papa, Pikin, we should understand all that. But a situation whereby a member of a people-centric party should now be facing allegations of embezzlement, it therefore means that you're not thinking about the mother, the father, and even the children. So what ideology are you perpetuating? It now begins to lead to all those defection galore, gale of defections in which you begin to hear. And when all these defections begin to take place, it is because they don't understand the orientation behind the ideology. And for them to begin to defect is because they are trying to secure their interest. Why? Because they have maybe spilled some milk on the floor, which has now soiled everywhere, or the content in the cup is full and it's soiling everywhere. They don't know how to handle it. So the best way to actually seek haven or safe haven will be to move over to the opposition camp. We have a lot of them, some Senate presidents, some governors, because they have some kind of shady things which they are going after. They know that the opposition parties will come after them. They seek refuge within the political party. Another thing again, which politicians don't even pay attention to, but rather influences their sense of reasoning by not understanding the ideology, is maybe ethnic or regional reasons. Because, for instance, in a particular region, you can have some tribes which are not proper interactions or relating with these people freely. They choose to now have some sentiments, now bringing up their own party. That's why most of the time you have inter-party crisis. Why? But it's actually generated from ethnic crisis. Take, for instance, now what we have now, which is going on in Benue State, the Tiv and the Idoma. These are two different tribes. And those both tribes now are at loggerheads, belong to different parties. So if we look at it, this thing, ethnic factors also influence ideologies also. Personal interests also influence ideologies also. But the major thing is that politicians really fail to understand what is the essence of the ideology behind a political party.
Right. I think we should move away from this a little bit. Talking about that Benue situation, the president actually, went there. But before he went there, he sent his condolence message, and he was like, enough is enough, unnecessary bloodletting in Benue State and all that. And you see, people were really angry at the fact that you sent a message to India first, a message of sympathy to India first, before even reaching out to people in your own, home, in short. So, in this kind of situation, are we going to say that they are more focused on, having this unity or probably a good relationship with other countries rather than making or ensuring that the people of their own country are in a good place?
Well, looking at it from this point of view, the president is actually a father of the country and also playing the father figure role globally. So if he had been responsive to internal issues and also external issues, it has to do with just a factor of timing. That's the thing. So it might be that the relations or foreign policy dealings which he has to have with India, if not attended to other point in time, might affect interactions with India. But be that as it may, first of all, you need to quench the fire in the house, before you think of the fire outside.
Okay, so former governor of Delta State, James Ibori, returns in 2017 after his jail term in UK, and he was received with fanfare and celebration. And also, let's not forget the issue of Yaya Bello that was swept under the carpet, where we had the issue of EFCC and Yaya Bello then, and he kept going on and on. And regardless, we didn't hear that, oh, Yaya Bello was sentenced to go to do this or to do that, or anything coming from, punishing him or anything. So I want to ask that, my question is, why do politicians with alleged corruption charges often get celebrated instead of getting punished in Nigeria?
Coming from points of Godfatherism again, they play behind the scenes. So for them not to have been, or for punitive measures not to have been meted out on them, it now begins to raise question marks as to how transparent is the system in which we operate. Because I want to believe that if it was an opposition party, definitely the claws of the vultures and the hyenas, the teeth from the hyenas would have actually gone on Yaya Bello. But there must have been some compromise that must have come in, because I'm talking about compromise coming from Ibori's avenue, because he was a PDP stalwart.
So,
Now, talking about Yaya Bello, of course, he is in the ruling party. So it's therefore normal for typical Nigerian politics for that to be played down. Now, looking at it again from another point of view, we should look at it from sycophancy and fanatics. These are the Judases in politics who engage in fanaticism. They actually tell you the lie. Is like someone who is indulging in alcohol. I'm not saying that the intake is bad, no disrespect to the beverages out there. But by the time it begins to intoxicate you, you will begin to see people who deceive you by telling you that, oh, don't worry, everything is all right. When in fact, everything is wrong. They see you're tipsy. So that is what is happening in politics. You're doing something wrong. The sycophants and the fanatics are actually hailing you. At the end of the day, not to deviate or digress, you are still going to be answerable to your maker. What did you use public funds for? These are the things which we need to be actually be relatable to or accountable for to our people side by side. So I won't vouch for people who are actually looting funds, and upon looting funds, they come around. Both the looter and beneficiaries of the lootings are both
the looter and the lootee.
The looter and the lootee.
All right. So talking about immunity, we know that most of these people enjoys immunity.
Yes.
But I just feel like this immunity thing, is it that it doesn't have its own boundaries? Because we can, now looking at the issue of embezzlement, I think in China, even if the president of the country is involved in corruption, I think the judgment is killing and all that. But here in Nigeria, we all say that they enjoy immunity and all that. Can we say that the immunity they enjoy is giving them the opportunity to even commit more crimes, and it's making it even more difficult to be accountable to the people?
Well, in politics, they say power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. So in Nigeria, or in Africa, not necessarily Nigeria alone now, we have this mentality of dominance. We want to be there. So we assert our dominance to remain relevant. So this relevance begins to intoxicate. And by the time it begins to intoxicate, we undo with utter disregard of established laws. I'm talking about the Constitution. Now, going over to the Constitution now, it needs to be amended regarding the immunity clause.
Yeah.
These have so been abused, such that even a former governor or a former chief executive will even get away with whatever he or she had done. Take, for instance, now let's use Donald Trump. Typically, when you are leaving office, it is formal for you upon leaving the White House to shake the incoming president. But he didn't do that when Joe Biden was coming in. He just took off and even flew over. So that was very wrong. Now, even with the attack of the Capitol, that's their own National Assembly, he was actually summoned facing court cases for the greater part of the Biden tenure. And he is still facing those cases. Now, it doesn't mean that because you are the president, you're not answerable before the law, but the reverse is the case here. Why? Because of this do you know who I am mentality. So I think there should be a review when it comes to the immunity clause concerning those at the helms of authority or corridors of power.
All right. So let's talk about the citizens. Normally, we know that citizens are supposed to be termed the kingmakers. And the reason why I say that is because when it comes to voting, it is the citizens that goes out to vote. But then reverse is the case here in Nigeria, because even before that election starts, we already know this person would win. I'm sure that we are in 2025 and then 2027, we already know that this person is going to win. Let's not mention names, but we already feel that it's going to be. A lot of Nigerians have already made up, even before he won the election, people are already saying, this person is going to stay 8 years. And then, when that person said it to me, I was like, 8 years? This man has not even started 4 years now. Why 8 years? I was like, okay, so you think this man will win? And you expect him after the 4 years, he would go back. No, he will spend his 8 years. So let's just keep that in mind and let's keep moving. So it means that that statement kind of relegates the power of the people. So I would like to know, why is voters' accountability so weak in Nigeria? Is it apathy? Is it fear? Or there's something deeper there?
Well, you mentioned voter apathy. You mentioned fear.
Fair.
When it comes to voter apathy and people trying to the voters' disposition to elections, it's a case of it's what's been happening before. Let's just go with the flow.
Yeah.
So voters are now so keen on the next available means of survival. That is why they don't know how to assert their rights. Why? Because the politicians have actually put a system or structure in place to make sure that they are not just informed, but also misinformed, such that they do not know their rights as kingmakers. Going back now to the Oyo Empire, you had the Oyo Mesi. These were the kingmakers. They are the ones who actually mingle with the people to know what to actually pass through the Alafi. You don't see the Alafi anyhow. The Alafi was more or less like someone who was an intermediary between the gods and also the people. So
the second in command. That's how the Yoruba people call them.
Thank you very much. So if you look at it now, in this case now in a democratic setting, where the rights of people should actually be valued, the citizens' votes actually has or holds power. So therefore, the citizens should be the kingmakers. But I will continue to say the reverse will always be the case in Nigeria. The cabals, the godfathers, they are the ones who have the final say, who are so immune. Why? Because they have the resources, they have the networks to undermine independent bodies such as the electoral umpire, to manipulate elections or any political process to their own winning. And now, in that therefore, another factor is poverty, stomach infrastructure. By the time you now begin to look at how poverty-ridden a people are, Two-Face sang a song the other time, if you cannot educate your people, I've forgotten how the lyrics goes, but it has to do with educating the people so that the country will have power. Because once a people are educated, they are armed with information, as such, they have power. Now, when your citizens are not armed with information, they are powerless. They don't know their rights. You can actually manipulate them. Why? Because they are gullible. And how gullible would they be now to be dependent on material benefits for short terms? Such as, maybe, for instance, you're giving 4,000 naira to polling vote. It therefore means that for 4 years, for 1 year, you're dependent on 1,000 naira. Maybe you're giving 4 noodles, you're using 1 noodles for 1 year. You can imagine. That's why I began by saying stomach infrastructure.
Yeah.
So these short-term material benefits would not go a long way. Then you now come with palliatives during your tenure when you've won the elections. It doesn't make sense. But if you have actually armed a citizen with information on, okay, this is the right candidate, this is his or her own track record, but unfortunately, track record here doesn't work here in Nigeria. Doesn't matter here. It's who is actually able to deliver within the seconds that will actually win at the end of the day. So most importantly, I think the citizens need to be informed and over-informed again, if our leaders will be having that conscience enough to do the needful.
All right. Okay. So, like you said, that the people needs to be informed, but we know that what they majorly do is weaponize poverty, and because they know that once there is hunger in town or hunger in the land, the people are no longer focused on who is who. What they're focused on is, let me eat. I just want to eat. I just want to be okay. That's what matters to Nigerians. And because, maybe we easily adapt to things. Some people will come online and be like, why are we not talking? Things are getting on the high side. Why are Nigerians not talking? But I just feel like Nigerians have gotten to a point where they feel like whatever you throw at us, we'll just accept it and move on. And I think that is because we do not know our right, like you said, because we're not getting the education, the awareness we need. But I also feel like these people in power would not want us to be educated. They would not want us to know our right, because they know that if we know our rights, then we can fight them. So I feel like that is why they're trying to block any means of getting informed and getting the information. Now, let's talk about the promises and the manifestos we hear during elections, during campaigns. And, I think it was during one show that we heard, and you were saying something that they make it look as though infrastructure, saying they want to build hospitals, saying they want to reconstruct the road, is something that they're like, it's not like they're doing us a favor. Why, in the actual sense, those are the things, they are not even supposed to be in your manifestos. Those are the things that you're supposed to do since you're coming to serve the people. Now, let's talk about Buhari's manifestos in 2015, when he talked about insecurity and then economy, like stabilizing the economy. Versus what happened in 2023, we know that it was like he didn't meet up to this thing. So why is it that what we hear during campaign is always different from what happens after the election?
Well, looking.
Okay.
Can I continue?
Okay.
Just continue to answer.
Okay. Well, looking at it, it's like saying either talk is cheap or let's see what you have to offer. Campaigns are different from post-elections. Why? Because during the campaigns, you're not yet wearing the shoe to know where it pinches.
Yeah.
If we recall, or might we recall, PDP was in power at that time.
Sure.
Knowing how they were padding the whole effects or whatever, let's say Nigeria was in stitches. Let me put it that way. So
they were making it look good, packaging it.
That's the word. But they didn't actually know. That's why I began by saying talk is cheap until they got into office. It was when the opposition got into the office, that's when the country began to feel the brunt or bear the brunt of what actually was alarming. It was enough to be dropping people's jaws in awe. Now, looking at it further, so many factors might come into play. We have insecurity going on now. You have banditry, you have kidnapping. We also have, globally speaking, economic downturns, which will also influence the agenda or manifesto in which the country, the candidates actually came in with upon getting into office. Secondly, you have the Godfathers again. They still have a role to play. Their decisions will actually influence those who are actually in office, who have been elected, as to, okay, this is what you have to do. It's either we or the people. But they have to look for a way to weigh the balance. So at least the people don't feel it. At least they feel the administration's effects positively or negatively, knowingly or unknowingly, to a citizenry that is not well equipped with information or probably partially equipped with information. So all these factors come into play. Economic downturns, like I said earlier on, also play a major factor there. For instance, now the dollar might be up. It will also like affect prices of things there. For instance, borders are shut. Countries which are bringing in foodstuff, you can't even get there. You have the banditry and kidnapping. People can't go to their farms. It will begin to affect the administration and people will begin to complain. And once they begin to complain, it leads to protest. It will now appear, funny enough, we might not even exclude this aspect that it might be undermined or propagated or instigated by the opposition party to make the people feel that this particular party, the elected into office, they are not performing. So all these things are all gimmicks to actually unseat the incumbents to make the opposition look they are better off. It's only normal for any party to bring in their candidates who has won election, filling in office, to be criticized, condemned, or even probably crucified by the opposition party.
All right. So still talking about the people, I feel like protest stems from the fact that people are not comfortable with some things. People like public outrage, like this thing is not going as planned. This is not what we want. But most times in Nigeria, public outrage does not translate political consequences, because normally when the public are coming out to say that this is what we don't want, they are supposed to come up with a policy that at least incorporate the need of the people. But that does not happen in Nigeria. Let's talk about the massacre in 2020. Although the people came out to say, okay, end bad governance, the SARS and all of that. But then during that time, it was just more like they were renaming these people. So when they said we do not want SARS, they gave them another name. So it means that what the people really need was not really tackled. It was just like, they're just trying to find their way around it. So my question is, why does public outrage not translate political consequence in Nigeria?
Well, it's a case of Nigeria has this mentality now, not only those at the helm of affairs now.
Okay.
They have this mentality of when people are provoked, they're like, any suru, calm down, not be no, not this. Before you say Jack, they call you to one corner and say, yeah, hold this one, no this. That is a psyche now that has been sown in the mentality of some Nigerians.
Yeah.
Not necessarily Nigeria alone now, it might be everywhere. So they need to break out from this. They need to totally break themselves out from this kind of mental bondage. Once that is corrected, it can also be checkmated at the helm of affairs. Someone brings in a policy which is not going down well with the people, or sets up an institution such as SARS, which is not going down well with the people, and they begin to protest. You have no right to fire guns at them, because you who is ordering the massacre of these people is like slaughtering your own children, because you're a father figure now, even though you happen to be filling in some institutionalized sector as an elected office. Yeah. You are taking care of the people. You don't unleash harm on them. You're meant to guard, you're meant to guide, you're meant to protect. So that was definitely uncalled for. So when protests are actually coming up, it is also a legitimate means of making demands before the governments that this policy which you initiated or this institution which you set up isn't functioning properly. You need to go back to your drawing board and see what will actually work.
All right. So lastly, to wrap this up, what we see of politicians online is their flamboyant life, their big cars, their mansions and all of that. And then, talking about the Benue situation that happened. Now, the president was visiting Benue State, got there, and then the governor of the state, Halia, now, welcomed him with drums, with dance and all of that. And then he even declared that particular day public holiday. Now, the president is supposed to come into the state to pay his condolence visits, but in the actual sense, you are welcoming him in all celebration, like everything is okay. So now my question is, politicians, are they public servants? When we say public servant, it means you're coming in to serve the people. You're not coming to lead. One thing that I say about leadership is that you're not coming to lead as such. You're coming to serve the people. Now, when you serve the people and then you gain their trust, that is when you lead. But if you do not gain the people trust and you just come in and you want to lead, there will be a lot of problems. So now my question is, are these people who are known to be public servants, are they really serving the people, or they're just showing us their big and, luxurious life?
Talking about big and luxurious life, I would say our politicians are also celebrities.
Okay.
Because looking at the flamboyant lifestyle, you're in public office. I was listening to one of the octogenarians in their 80s back then, and it was like, when they want to start talking, I'm like, as far back as 1960, as far back as 1977, Muritala had only 20 naira in his bank account. And 20 naira was big money then. If a flight ticket was 75 naira back then. So I really got to hear a lot from those elder statesmen. So the point now is, our politicians now have grown into a lifestyle of, I need to be this. Why? Because I need to be respected. Now, is it insecurity as a person, or is it selfishness as a person? So we need to be looking at all these things. Why? Because they want to make a statement for themselves, wardrobe allowances, so many things. It still boils down to cutting down of government expenditure. Because, for instance, now you can see someone like, having 1 million naira for breakfast, 1 million naira for lunch, 1 million naira for dinner. So all those things need to be slashed. When in fact you can just go to some mama put or some buka and, for instance,
have a good meal.
And have a good meal at maybe for 1,000 or 3,000.
And you're good. You're good for half of the day. You're fine.
So there are so many things that need to be checkmated. Now, coming to the Benue attacks, typically you watch our foreign films on Hollywood, Netflix, and could just mention a few. Once there's a burial, see them all in black with the umbrella, and everybody is sorrowful or mournful, and it ends there. But here, our burial is actually a carnival. Okay. So it won't be surprising when we carry our culture to any institutionalized venture, Because, for instance, we go to our churches. If no disregard to any ethnic group, if you're getting into a particular church which is dominated by the Southwest, you can feel the rhythm from the music. If you're entering any church that is actually belonging to the Southeast, you can feel the rhythm from the music. Likewise, the North or even the South-South. So if the president actually got there and he was welcomed with that kind of a finesse, it therefore meant that it's a cultural thing that has now been infused into an institutional system, when in fact, people have been massacred, people have been killed, people have been slaughtered like animals, and then you're throwing a fanfare because you're welcoming the president. But welcoming the president isn't bad, but how he was actually welcomed is actually key. It's a case of, okay, we're going straight to everybody ought to, or everyone ought to have been on a sorrowful note, moving down, these are people who have been injured. Take them like your children because you're the father figure now as the number one citizen. So that's the way I say it. We need to change the mentality of flamboyancy and whatever or something. You don't come in there or you wait until people are massacred before you know how to dish out medical palliatives or addressing some stomach delinquencies when it comes to stomach infrastructure.
All right. Thank you very much for joining me on the show today. It's really a good one, talking about what political science does not teach us about Nigerian politicians. While we're in school, we're taught democracy. We're even told that no one is above the law. But then actually in Nigeria, we also know that the law is for the poor people coming to the real world, actually. So that will be all on today's episode of Veegilant Podcast, where we discuss civic matters and talk from other people's perspective. Do not forget to subscribe and to follow us on our social media platform for more content. Until the next, do have a great weekend.